Thank you so much, Ethan. Hi, everyone. As Ethan said, my name is Lauren Sampson. I'm a staff attorney at Lawyers for Civil Rights. We are a racial justice impact litigation nonprofit headquartered here in Boston, and there I coordinate the Race and Climate Justice Project. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about some of your rights as a tenant, some things to know vis-a-vis utilities, and some other protections that you have in terms of non-discrimination and language access. So to begin, we want to start with something extremely important during the winter, utility rights. So under Massachusetts law, your landlord must pay for your gas and electricity unless it specifically says in an agreement, typically a lease, that you pay, and there is also a separate meter for your apartment. Importantly, no gas or electric company can shut off or fail to restore gas or electric service to any resident where a person has a serious illness if they can't afford to pay because of financial hardship. You do have to provide that utility company with proof of that illness and financial hardship, but if you do that, and then they cannot shut off your power. And we definitely recommend doing that preemptively. So letting your utility company know ahead of time, hey, there's a person in this household with serious illness, so that if financial hardship does strike, as it has for so many during the pandemic, they already have the documentation they need. Similarly, no gas or electric company shall shut off gas or electric service in any resident with an infant under the age of 12 months if, similarly, the household is suffering a financial hardship. And so again, if you are pregnant, if you know you're about to have a baby, you're about to adopt a baby, we definitely recommend letting your utility company know that so that they're aware in advance that if they try to shut off their power and you can demonstrate both the financial hardship and the presence of an infant, that they won't be able to do so. Lastly, utility companies that are governed by the Department of Public Utilities cannot shut off utilities in a household where all members are over the age of 65 unless they first submit a request to the Department of Public Utilities, which would have to okay it. And that would only be if there was, some extenuating circumstance, like maybe there was an extreme delinquency on the bills or something along those lines. In Massachusetts, there's also a winter moratorium on shutoffs, typically between November 15th and March 15th, though that can be extended in certain cases, which means that for all households, regardless of who's living there, there cannot be shutoffs. So water rights are slightly different. Under the Massachusetts Constitution, all persons have a right to clean water. And typically in Massachusetts, landlords are the ones with the obligation to provide the water. So they must provide occupants with potable water in a quantity and pressure to meet the ordinary needs of the occupant, and also to provide and maintain facilities in good operating condition, which are capable of heating water. So you need to have not just water, drinking water, but also access to hot water. In most circumstances, because again, there has to be a very specific provision in your lease, even if the tenant is typically paying those bills, the landlord might actually be legally responsible. So if you or someone you know is a tenant and has been paying for your hot water, has been paying for your water bill more generally, it may be helpful to check in with a legal services attorney or someone like an LCR to make sure that your landlord isn't violating the terms of the lease or of Massachusetts law. Tenants also have the right to maintain water service even if the landlord fails to pay the water bill. So what we often see is a landlord has to declare bankruptcy or sells a property. They don't properly communicate with the water department, and then the tenants don't have access to water and have to make the request to get that turned back on. It's important to note that unlike in it's actually covered by this slide. Unlike with many utility companies that provide gas or electricity, very few folks in Massachusetts are getting their water from what are known as investor-owned utilities. So distinguishing factor there is the investor-owned utilities are companies like Eversource or National Grid or Unitil. They are regulated by the Department of Public Utilities. By contrast, for many people, water is provided by water districts by their city or town or like a local district. Those aren't regulated by the Department of Public Utilities. So the Department of Public Utilities can't do things like institute a moratorium on water shutoffs because they just don't have jurisdiction over them. A lot of cities and towns have decided on their own accord to institute moratoria against water shutoffs. And we would urge you, if you have experienced a water shutoff, especially during the pandemic, to please contact Lawyers for Civil Rights so that we can help. The investor-owned utility companies, again, the big ones being National Grid, Unitil, Eversource, and the like, have agreed with the DPU to refrain from shutting off gas, electric, and if they happen to, water utility service to any customers for failure to pay a bill until at least April 1st, 2021. So if your utilities have been shut off, or if you receive notice that they will be shut off, call your utility company immediately. You can also contact organizations like Lawyers for Civil Rights, Greater Boston Legal Services, the Attorney General's Office, or the National Consumer Law Center, which is headquartered here in Boston. So you also are able to get assistance with your utility bills if need be. Private utility companies, so those investor-owned utility companies I was describing before, are required to offer customers discount rates on utility service. You're eligible if you're under 60% of the area median income, which is actually pretty high for places like Suffolk County and Middlesex County, so definitely check if you're eligible. If you have not yet been actually terminated from the utility, you have the right to create a payment plan that has to be at least 4 months in length. The company cannot terminate you, i.e. it cannot shut off your power, if you are able to pay in installments of a quarter of the amount owed per month. There are also some benefit programs that can assist individuals who need assistance. LIHEAP is probably the most well-known one, the Low Income Home Energy Assistance Program. It provides direct financial assistance to help low-income households pay their heating-related bills. A couple important things to know about LIHEAP. You can apply as early as November 1st each year for assistance throughout the winter. Even though there are eligibility requirements from the perspective of immigration, as long as one person in the household is eligible, i.e. is a citizen, is a legal permanent resident, or is what's known as a qualified alien, so a refugee, an asylum seeker, and the like, then the household can still receive LIHEAP. It's just going to be prorated based on the number of people in the household who are eligible. In addition, LIHEAP does not count as income if you're calculating eligibility for most benefits and for the public charge rule. So if you are trying to get a green card and you are receiving LIHEAP, it's not going to count against you when the federal government is determining your eligibility for that immigration relief. So we talked a bit about the gas and energy suppliers like Eversource, National Grid, Unitil. These utility companies are distributing power to households around Massachusetts, but there is another kind of energy company that we want folks to know about. These are energy suppliers, competitive energy suppliers. So they don't distribute the electricity, but they can supply it to homes. These developed in the 1990s when the Massachusetts energy market was deregulated. And while they were originally intended to provide people with more choice, to make the market more competitive, in reality, many of them target low-income neighborhoods and offer people pricing plans that just do not work and do not make sense. Some examples I've listed here: Clean Choice Energy, Liberty Power, SFE, Reliant, Veridian. You might see them going door to door or receive phone calls or mailers. They can engage, and often do engage, in a lot of predatory and deceptive tactics, including a practice known as slamming, switching accounts without an account holder's knowledge or consent, forcing their way into people's homes and refusing to leave without a signed contract, claiming to work for a utility company to gain personal or financial information, or falsely promising lower bills or energy efficient or green savings, when in reality, the company is not positioned to offer anything of the like. So a way to know if you've gotten hooked up with a supplier, either because you chose to or because you were signed up without your consent, is to take a good look at your energy bill. Typically, a person will get just one energy bill, but they'll see two different costs. There'll be a separate cost for supply and a separate cost for generation or distribution. If you see a cost for both, then you are signed up with an energy supplier, and you probably want to change that, because in all likelihood, according to countless reports from everyone from National Consumer Law Center to the Attorney General, you're probably overpaying for electricity and getting very little in return. So one of the things you can do to protect yourself are to contact your utility to be placed on a do not switch list so that your account can't be switched to a supplier, to refrain from giving your utility account information to anyone, including agents who come to your door or who call you claiming that they represent your utility company. And you can always contact us if you have questions about that. To keep track of solicitation efforts in your neighborhood. Are people coming door to door? Are people getting mailers? Are phone calls being made? And contact us if you learn of someone who's been a victim of these kinds of scams. And then also making sure that you know what current regulatory policy is. So the Department of Public Utilities has currently requested that suppliers refrain from door-to-door marketing activities because of the upswing in COVID. We have every reason to believe that they are following this directive, but please let us know if you do hear that suppliers are actually disobeying this and going door to door. So switching gears a little bit, one thing I really want to emphasize is that if for folks who are immigrants, who are people of color, that you don't need to be concerned about seeking help from local, state, federal governments, especially in cases of disaster or when there's a need for assistance. At every level of government, discrimination based on things like race, ethnicity, religion, national origin is unlawful. And I've highlighted here a few key examples. At the local level, the district attorney's office, here I've highlighted Suffolk County, but this is certainly true throughout Massachusetts, will protect victims of crime regardless of the national origin, race, et cetera, of the victim. The same is true at the state level, the unlawfulness of discrimination based on all these categories, and the Stafford Act, and a really important federal statute dealing with disasters and emergencies, specifically notes that discrimination on the basis of race, religion, nationality, and the like is prohibited. Most and many government websites will provide at least a translation in Spanish. You can also see that a lot of governmental websites will be using the Google Translate plugin. So what that means is if you look at like the top of the browser, you'll see like a little globe image, and you can change it to one of a number of different languages, and it will just automatically translate the page using Google Translate. So know that that's available, and that's, for example, for the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, you can access almost any state page using the Google Translate feature. And so that really runs the gamut from, do you need emergency information about COVID-19? Do you need emergency information about like weather alerts or where to get public health assistance? You should be able to get all of that in the language that you speak. You can also sign up for emergency alerts in other languages. For example, you can do that through MEMA, the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, through different cities, the city of Boston, the city of Somerville, and make sure you get that in your language. We wanted to note also that during a state of emergencies, folks have certainly been contacting our office about, we heard that certain things are suspended. What's going on? What does that mean? And while certain provisions have been suspended, that's certainly not true across the board. So for example, open meeting laws have been somewhat suspended in order to reflect the fact that we can't gather and we shouldn't be gathering in large groups or in public enclosed spaces. Certain public gatherings, of course, have been banned, and certain businesses and institutions have been asked to close or to operate at a reduced capacity. However, the fact that, for example, open meeting laws have been somewhat suspended does not mean that in general, statutes, regulations, and the like that protect people's rights have been suspended. Civil rights groups, the Attorney General, the District Attorney's Office will continue to focus on areas that impact marginalized communities, language access, mistreatment of workers, and the like. And of course, key constitutional and statutory rights have not been suspended. Your right to equal treatment, your protection against discrimination, and all the rest. One question, of course, we always hear from folks are that they're concerned to gather, to go to places, to seek help, to go to the emergency room, and to do so many things because they're concerned about ICE activity. This was especially true over the course of the past 4 years, where we saw people afraid, for example, to go to court to get RFAs, like relief from abuse orders, or to get other kinds of assistance because they were, in all fairness, rightfully concerned about ICE enforcement. We really want to emphasize that immigrants should not avoid seeking medical care because they fear civil immigration enforcement. ICE has long had a policy of not making arrests at what are known as sensitive locations. These include schools, healthcare facilities, and the like. Two, we expect that now ICE will focus its enforcement on public safety risks and people subject to mandatory detention because of criminal backgrounds, as opposed to just kind of snatching up undocumented people writ large. ICE also has discretion, and we have every expectation that they will exercise that discretion to delay enforcement for those who don't fall under those categories.
Thank you so much.